Do you have a strong feeling you were made for more, but you don't know how to move from the woman you are to become the woman you were meant to be? Well, sit back, because today we are speaking to Yawa Hansen, the founder of the Leading Ladies Network, and she's going to tell us all about how we can move to become the women we were meant to be. This is She Means Business. I am your host, Claire Munde. Hi, Yawa.
Hello.
Welcome to She Means Business.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and welcome to Kenya again.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, today we're going to have a conversation around women leadership, and you're big in that space, and you came highly recommended. So when we're talking about women in leadership, a couple of people mentioned your name, and they said, you know, you have to have her on She Means Business. So I said, okay, let's have her on. So for those who don't know you, I'd like us to have a little bit of a background. Who is Yawa? I did a little research on you, and I found that you were initially a political refugee. You grew, you moved into the space of leadership. But who is Yawa? Give us a little bit of background about you.
First of all, thank you for having me. I have the great honor of being what you might call a multicultural African. My family is from Ghana, and formative years of my life were spent in the U.S. The U.S. is where I learned to speak English. We were an immigrant family, and my family was part of the multitude of Ghanaians that left in the early 80s because of the military coup that ousted a president that my father was serving at the time. So we started off formative years of my life, at least, in the US, and I was experiencing what most immigrants experience, which is the feeling of not fitting in, of being isolated, of not quite finding one's voice. Then I had an extra disadvantage, if you will, that when we started school, spoke very little English at the time, and most of the classmates that I had thought that my voice was really, really deep. And in all honesty, it is. But I used to get teased at an early age about my voice, about my being African, and I, like many women, lost confidence in myself. I lost faith in who I am. I became mute. Even if I knew the answer to a question in class, I would dare not raise my hand because I didn't want the ridicule. And I think that formative experience informs the work I do today, because I know what it's like to let life circumstances steal your voice. I know what it's like to feel like you don't quite fit in anywhere, but at the same time, know that there's this internal voice telling you that you are made for more. And back to that childhood story, one of my formative memories was my father asking me why I had become so quiet, because I was no longer my boisterous, fun, happy self. And when he prodded me to find out why I wasn't speaking up, I told him I didn't speak because people were teasing how I sounded. Then he asked me a very simple question. He said, when you're in school and your teacher is taking the attendance call or the roll call, how do you announce that you're there? And I said, well, I say present, sir, or present, madam. He says, that's right. You use your voice. If you do not use your voice, it's as good as being absent. That's one of the formative lessons that I learned early in life, that you've got to use your voice. You've got to trust that God created you with purpose, and there's only one you. So we weren't born to fit in, we were born to stand out. And that's really informed much of the work that I do today. For the past 15 years, I've worked as a coach, a guide, an advisor to women in leadership that are hearing that call that I heard several years ago, that I know I'm made for more, but I've got this life circumstance. I've got these challenges. I've got this thing with my voice. How do I take what I've got and harness it to offer it up to the world? Because the truth is, there are usually other people waiting on the other side of you becoming who you're meant to be. We really strongly believe that it's time for us to start preparing for prominence. For some of the listeners or viewers hearing us now, they might know that there's this idea they've been sitting on for a long time, they are their biggest critic because of feedback from past mistakes, or people looking at them with ridicule, like how I've been looked at many times with ridicule, like, who are you? What good can come out of you? But there's something about forging a path, often in isolation, and then eventually in partnership with others, that really helps you become a stronger, bolder, braver version of yourself that's able to transform the world. And I think the world needs more women who are awake, alert, and alive to their power. And I'm committing the rest of my life to help unlock that.
And you know, a lot of people are told this, especially women, speak up at a meeting, even if it's one thing, you need to be heard. And I want us to unpack that a little bit more, because you said, you know, your dad asked you, why are you quiet? And you were like, okay, I'm being ridiculed and so on and so forth. And you know, formative years play a very critical role on how we turn out. So how did you move from that person who was reserved because of the ridicule to say, you know what, my voice might be deep, I might have this and that, but you know what, I'm here and I am who I am?
I have a theory, and my theory is that one cannot be one's best self by themselves. In my most recent book, The Leading Lady Way, I have a whole chapter dedicated to this theory. I do think the internal work is one that you have to do for yourself, of believing and deciding that you will take all you've got, your lived experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly. You'll take your natural proclivities and you will hone it to the advantage so that you can be useful. But I do think that process does require other people. And my theory around you being unable to become your best self by yourself is just acknowledging the fact that if you will become great, you often can't do it alone. You'll need people to advise you, to coach you, to provoke you. And the three categories of supporters that I highly recommend for any woman who's ready to move to her next best expression of herself is mentorship. Who, you know, for me, a mentor is someone who is a bit further on the journey than you currently are, from whose experiences you can learn, you can leapfrog over their mistakes, you can compare notes, seek counsel, and adjust your decision making so that you're likely to achieve what they achieve because you've got that proximity. The second is counseling. And for me, this right here is the bane of so many women potential in leadership, because life happens. Maybe you go through an unexpected divorce, or grief through the loss of a loved one, or you got fired and you didn't expect that that would happen. And we sometimes, more than men, tend to dwell where life hit us. And so investing in counseling support is just the acknowledgement that life will life. Life will be lifing, as they say. And to hold yourself accountable to doing the internal work that you often can't do yourself, because truthfully, you can't look at a picture and appreciate it fully when you are in the frame. And oftentimes when we're hit by something, a tragedy, something difficult. So for example, in 2017, we gave birth, my husband and I we welcomed our first son, our second child. He was born with medical difficulties, has received a life-threatening diagnosis. And I tell you, my mental, emotional, psychological state was low. Life hit me. But I had to gather myself and recognize that the vision, the call, the purpose, what God's put in my heart to do, that still small voice telling me that I'm made for more, doesn't stop whispering because life has happened. In fact, sometimes it gets louder. And for women who will rise, you've got to be willing to call a spade, to say, look, I'm not in the right emotional state right now. I was with some friends yesterday evening here in Nairobi, and I told them that I'll be running late because I have a call with my coach. I need to talk through some things that are messing with my mind. And when I got there, I explained to them that, thank you, but I create space for me to submit my thinking, submit my plans, submit my proposed path for my future to others that have a little more experience on how minds work, how emotions can be regulated, so that as I serve other people, I am myself fed. And I think that for a lot of women, we're so used to pouring. We are the ones who solve other people's problems. We might be the backbone of our industry, our company, our families, our societies, but oftentimes we don't invest in that regulation. So that, if I'm being honest with myself, some of my marriage problems were really me not investing in my own emotional regulation. Me being overworked, overwhelmed, so that I'm irritable all the time. And of course, you take it out on your nearest and dearest. So counseling or counselors is that second category of support that I think every woman needs. And then lastly, is coaching. You know, coaching for me is about strategy. And I think a lot of us, we dwell in the realm of personal, you know, how does this thing make me feel? And we make judgments based on how a thing makes us feel, as opposed to strategically, this is a thing that has happened. How can I rise above how I feel about it and plot a plan that is in my strategic interest? Which means that sometimes you'll have to bear some things or deal with some people or tolerate or compromise, but coaching for women on the rise is critical. I, for instance, tell people that I coach that I am also being coached, and I honestly don't trust a coach who is not themselves being coached, because it's almost spiritual work. You're undergirding people as they're finding new and higher expressions of themselves. And so if you know, for example, Usain Bolt, the former world's fastest man, if you look at his coach has a pot belly. He can't run as fast as Usain Bolt, but he's got tactic and strategy that helped Usain take his natural ability to run fast and take it to a new level. If you look at Michael Jordan, he had Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson, looked, like someone who probably can't play basketball as well as Michael Jordan, but he had ability, strategy, tactic. And coaching gives us what oftentimes a lot of us don't get as women in leadership: accountability and provocation. That oftentimes you rise to a level where you are the impressive one in your friend group. You're the impressive one in your family. Everyone's impressed with where you are, and that's the most dangerous place to be. When people are applauding you all the time, it is a recipe for complacency, and then oftentimes shame. How does shame show up in that situation? When you're struggling, you're afraid to admit it, because you're the one that everyone's looking down up to, bowing down to, the one that everyone thinks has it all together. So part of that walk with coaching is the acknowledgement that I need a place and a space where I can be vulnerable to say, I'm not okay. I may be suited up and powdered up. I may look good to the outside world, but there are things I'm grappling with that need to find expression so that I can go on being my best self. So bringing it all together, that pathway towards prominence, being the best, boldest, bravest expression of oneself, requires an openness to acknowledge that I can't do it by myself. And I'm going to have to be deliberate in convening mentors and counselors and coaches to walk alongside me. And that, I think, is the missing link for a lot of women. That, oftentimes our careers are shooting up at the same time where our families are growing, our parents are aging, and in this part of the world, a lot of us have social responsibilities that extend past our immediate family. And so we're dealing with, elder care or paying tuition for extended family members. And so as a result of those pressures, I find that a lot of us actually have not chosen ourselves. And it's a choice. The woman that you want to be will cost you. It will sometimes cost you a reputation among your nearest and dearest that, you used to help, you used to do this, you used to let us have this access to you, but now we don't get it. because the woman that I'm called to be needs me to curate my circles differently. The woman that I'm called to be requires me to make investments in me. So for example, in my life, this is an example of what that's looked like. I would have dreams of like speaking to international audiences and going around the world and on stages, but I'm terrified to speak. I'm conscious of my voice. And so I take the future picture and superimpose that on now. If that future picture will be true, I need to start learning how to hone my voice, use it to my advantage. And because I grew up in America, I spoke very fast, had a slang accent that was hard to understand. And so I've been on an 18-year journey of investing in my public speaking journey. So to all your viewers and listeners, I really want to encourage that if you have ambitions and you are hearing that voice telling you that there's more, lean into that and start building your circles. Who are the people that I want to be mentored by? And a mentor you may not have a personal relationship with, but you can leverage technology to be mentored by people. I have a business coach now. I've never met in person. All of the calls I have are online. I'm part of his coaching community. It's been phenomenal reading his books, listening to places where he speaks, etc. Because honestly, in this new age, we have very little excuse. So decide that woman that I see is possible for me to become requires me to make some adjustments today. It may cost me in the short term, but I've got to be deliberate about curating these circles. Who are my mentors? Who are the people that I seek counsel from? Mentoring and counseling and coaching, they sound joyful, but it's not. It means being open to ridicule, being open to provocation, being open to someone telling you, this is not your best. This is not your best work. And I am concerned that we're in a moment where we're just cheerleading women all of the time, that we're not giving or getting enough tough love to really adjust ourselves for what's required. So often there's a lot of us that are kind of in this space where we've got visibility, but we've got no stability, because we're not undergirded by these three categories.
Something that has stood out for me is this element of coaching, and it's not how I feel, because sometimes you feel like, oh, I don't want to do this, but there's this woman you want to become. So you need to make those tough decisions, because sometimes we shy away from getting feedback because it's not what we want to hear. And I also like the way you said, sometimes you're going to have to ring fence yourself and decide maybe these are not the people who will come with me, but speak to that, because sometimes women get scared of moving to their next selves because they're like, oh my goodness, yeah, you think you're better than everyone these days. I mean, you just used to be like us. So what would you say to that woman who is like, I do want to become a better version of myself, but I'm scared people will think that, you know what, you think you're full of yourself?
I say do it anyway. Part of becoming the version of yourself that will win, and for me, winning is fulfilling purpose. Becoming that person will require you to sharpen discernment about who and where is this comment coming from. Because sometimes you fulfilling your dream just puts it in the face of those who are not fulfilling theirs. So the snide remarks, the backhanded comments are not a function of you doing anything wrong, but it's the discomfort that you bring out because, you know, she's going at it with all of this energy, and it brings to fore the fact that I am not. So don't take it personal. I think when people give you advice, you need to sieve it. You know, what in this is useful and what isn't. And, you know, some people who are critical of us are usually our helpers in disguise, because it helps you to reinforce why this is important. You have to remember in dark moments what you felt God was nudging you about, you know, in those moments where nobody else was there. And every step that I've taken that has elevated me to new levels has been met with marital tension, family issues, friendships broken, who is she? What is she thinking? Part of what I really want to forewarn anyone who's listening to us about is that it won't be smooth sailing. It will mean you have to stand up for you, learning how to advocate for yourself. That, family members I've had to call to say, you know what, don't count on me financially anymore for this, because I'm ring fencing some money to take care of a few other things. And when I rise to a new level of impact, it's usually also a new level of financial reward. And I can be so much more valuable to them in the long term if I take this short-term hit. So for those that are sitting on the fence, it's not often that they don't know what to do. They just aren't convinced in their mind that the short-term loss is worth it. Because you will lose prestige sometimes. There are some things that you may have to do without in order to do them. So for a lot of us as women, it's really just deciding that the person that I'm called to be is worth this short-term investment. So for example, anyone who's been on a wellness or fitness journey understands that interruptions and disruptions are always going to follow when you make a decision. The day you decide to start a diet, that's when your friends call you, we've got a party going on, come to this buffet, The day you decide to start going to the gym, the weather will be so cold, you want to snuggle up in bed. So I think part of it is just the realism, to understand that it won't be pretty all the time. I won't be liked all the time, and that's okay. Which is why every woman needs to start curating new circles for themselves. I think every woman needs 3 circles. The circle of peers. Peers are really useful to compare notes with. Probably at the same stage of life, probably, kind of married at the same time, certain kids, so they're dealing with some of the same challenges. So it's a useful place to compare notes and to share, like, who's your plug for this? Who helps you with that? Every woman also needs circles of people ahead of them. Circles of people ahead of you are useful sources of wisdom that enable you to leapfrog the mistakes that they may have made. And then everyone needs a circle behind you, and especially now in this digital age, because oftentimes we've got these needs. And if you've ever heard Tony Robbins talk, he speaks about 2 human needs that I think are critical for women to recognize: a need for growth, but also a need for contribution. And I think for me, as we think about our Standout Women's Leadership Program and what we aim for, it's not just that we want more women in leadership just because, but when a woman rises, it's the exponential potential of her impact on others. And so for me, are you growing and are you contributing? Those are the 2 key words.
Now let's talk a little bit about the Leading Ladies Network and the things that you have picked from coaching women and seeing women in leadership, some of the struggles they've faced, and then speak to us about this prominence and what you're doing right now in Nairobi.
The Leading Ladies Network was founded 15 years ago. So I've been on this journey for over a decade, nearing our 2nd decade of work. And our vision is twofold. One, we want to fill the future leadership pipeline with women of competence and confidence who can execute at a high level. And so that work needs to start really early, we believe. And so a lot of our work is with young women in school systems, getting them to do simple things like run for student government, because the statistics show that the earlier a woman engages in some sort of act of leadership, the more likely she'll take it on in the future. So that work has seen us partner with different junior high schools and high schools all over West Africa. And we are just really excited about the impact of that work, especially because many of those young women that we started with 15 years ago are now in the world of work, rising in their careers, and that's impressive. The second part of our mission is strengthen the capacity of existing women leaders. And we do that primarily through our Stand Out Women's Leadership Program. Our hypothesis was this, that there are a lot of women rising through the ranks in companies, in public institutions, in politics, And oftentimes they don't look like they need support because they are better than most. I don't know what the statistics for East Africa are, but in West, it's estimated that only 5% of sub-Saharan Africans are able to access a university education. And when you look at, over the enrollment rates over the years, more and more women going in to higher education, but we don't see the related increase in the number of women showing up as visible leaders in corporate, in public sector, and in political leadership. So the Standout Women's Leadership Program really was designed to attack that. How do we undergird women who have already risen and are on the rise? So emerging and ascendant women in professional sectors. So we've had the great pleasure to design and implement this program with hundreds of women across the West Africa region. We had our first East Africa cohort last year, and we had 65 phenomenal women, emerging and ascendant leaders in corporate and public sector Kenya. And so this year, that's why I'm back in Nairobi. We are hosting our second cohort of the Standout Women's Leadership Program, East Africa. And the vision really is to expand the reach of this program across the continent. And we felt Kenya was the right place to do it, given, at least in my opinion, Kenya seems to be the big brother of the East Africa region. And I have had decades of relationship with Kenya. I've been coming here on and off since 2014. I worked with different government agencies to establish a leadership program for women and young people here. So I felt like we had good connections and roots here in this country to really anchor the program. So that's why I'm here. And for any woman that's listening who really recognizes that she's made for more, there's this still small voice saying, to all my friends, to all my family, I might be the one, but I know there's more. The Standout Women Leaders Program may be for you. A lot of women have the title of leader, but don't have the authority. And so a lot of times we find that many of the women that come to our program are looking for how to express and own their power. So I have this theory that I teach in one of our master classes, and I ask the question, how do you wear your power? Assume power is like a jacket that you put on. What does your jacket of power look like? Because oftentimes we have a strong need to be liked. We want to be liked so bad. And I saw this in my own career, in my early stages of my career, in my first managerial job. I had a team of people reporting to me. I had the title of manager, but nobody respected me. I wanted to be liked. And so my team would go home and I'm sitting in the office doing work that they didn't do because they knew there would be no consequence. I'd not speak up. I just wanted to be the cool boss. I wanted to be the liked boss, that I wasn't being effective. The number of people, thousands of women around the world that I coach and mentor, because I was able to get over myself and my self-loathing of my voice and my background, am I good enough, am I African enough, am I this enough, and just say, this is me, raising my hand, reporting for duty. And to be that person that will impact at this level, it means I have to start doing these things differently. So it all starts with decision, realizing that there will be some disruptions, but understanding that you have to plug into community of people who are going in the same direction. A lot of sociologists will tell you that the one determining factor for whether a child will do well is environment. What environment are you in? And I think, adults, we're just big children. So what's the environment around you? Who's in your ear? Who are you listening to the most? Because what you repeatedly hear, you eventually believe. And if all you hear is, why are you being so extra? Why, you're too much. So many of us have heard that. So we got to turn down the volume of that and start listening to, you've got this. You can try. You either win or you learn. There is no losing. The only way to lose is to do nothing and to pursue with ambition. everything that God's put in you.
Awesome. I can see why you're highly recommended. Very important points there. Now, this is She Means Business, and I want us to talk a little bit about the business element. You coach, you have programs, and a lot of women who are experts in their field start thinking, okay, I've been in employment for a while, and I could become a coach. There are so many coaching programs right now out there, different prices and all that. But many people want to become that coach. There's executive leadership programs. So for that woman who's listening right now and they think, I have expertise in XYZ field, and I feel like I have something to offer to other women or even men, depending on what you're offering, what would you say is the pathway to start your entrepreneurship journey as a coach or somebody who has a program? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think coaching is such a wonderful industry, especially for women. If you want control of your time, if you want to be able to serve in an impactful way, but it also has its barriers. I think coaching has become very popular, and I think in our parts of the world, there's not an understanding of what the role of a coach is. So for people who, I have a community called Coaching for Coaches. So I've been teaching over the past year communities of coaches how to upskill themselves on the business side, because I think a lot of us are drawn to coaching because of some result we've got for ourselves, right? Some coaches might just be better as mentors. Just, this is what I did, this might help you. But coaches are, the output needs to be seen. So it's about a result. So that's why for me, coaching is about you're here and I can get you here. And so part of the process is being able to articulate what is it you really help people do. I'm really good at helping people strategize, to take the noise in their head and wrap it around a plan. I'm really good at helping people improve their communication. I know that as a coach, I'm such an empathetic person that I'm not good if what you need from me is emotional support. I've got enough on my plate emotionally that I cannot carry yours. And so some people also confuse what you actually need. You might actually need a psychotherapist, not a coach. Or you might actually need, to deal with a different category of advisor or consultant for specific things. So I think, number one, for those who are really interested in this as a business, get very clear about who you are for. We're not for everybody. I think I'm really good with professional women who are ready to level up, ready to move to a new level of impact. I can inspire all sorts of women with the wisdom that I've accumulated over the years. But I'm really good as a coach to women who are in the game and ready to leverage, a new expression of themselves to amplify and elevate their impact. So get very clear about who you serve. Get very clear about what you deliver. If you want to do well as an executive coach, you've got to be clear-minded about what you can help people implement. I was with one of my coaching clients in Ghana before traveling, and I took detailed notes about what she was telling me. She's like, I don't even think you fully understand, Yawa, what you've done for me. So I want you to understand, you are like no other. You help me clarify my thinking, you keep me accountable, and you help me communicate with excellence. And that's become new language for me now, because we are living in an abundance of information. People don't need more information. And oftentimes, people need to be reminded more than they need to be taught. So your role as a coach is to observe, like Usain Bolt's coach observes him, understands what movement he can change to get 3 milliseconds of a faster time on his run. So many of the women I coach are more senior than me. They're older than me. They have lived experience that I don't have, but I'm the Usain Bolt's coach who sits and says, from my perspective, you seem to be avoiding this. From my perspective, I would encourage, so it's provocation, it's resources, pointing them in the right direction of resources that can help them figure something out. And it's synthesization, because the number one challenge that many of us are having is information overwhelm. So if you pitch your coaching as like, I'm going to give you so much more information, people roll their eyes. But if you're saying, after 6 sessions with me, you're going to kill it when you go to your next board presentation, that's something I can be held to. If you do what I tell you, your next public event, your next whatever will be amazing, because many of the people that I coach, they come to me before a board presentation or a big public speaking engagement, and we work, and I said, you do the things I tell you, this is the outcome. So anybody who wants to run this as business has to be clear about who they serve, clear about the process, and clear about results, because otherwise it just feels gimmicky. It feels like a gimmick. It feels like you've gone to ChatGPT like everybody else, and you've come to tell me things that make no sense, and it's so generic. But you have to see people for where they are. You have to hear what's not being said. You have to anticipate what they might need, and you have to be in their corner. So for those who are starting the business, I'd encourage you to get a track record, identify who your ideal client is, and start serving a few of those so that you have some testimonials, right? Do it for free if necessary. Those first few, do it for free so that you're honing your craft, you're sharpening your process, and then you can start advertising with a track record of, a few clients that you have served who can vouch for what you do. But don't stop investing in yourself ever, because I think sometimes in coaching, you can get so complacent, thinking, yeah, I'm so good. I am amazing. I got this result the other day. And then you start having a chip on your shoulder. And the truth is, you stop growing, it's the start of death. Like, when was the last time you invested in you? When was the last time you received an upskilling yourself? When was the last time, so that's what keeps you fresh. That's what keeps you relevant. And that's what enables you to be a version of yourself that can back it up. You've got the receipts, as the young people say. You could show the receipts that, this is where I was and this is where I am. If you want some of what I've got, I can walk you through the process. And I think the last thing I would say on the business piece of coaching is also recognizing that you might need to develop a business model where you've got group programs or one-on-one programs, or so my revenue, and this is, like I said, I'm working with a business coach helping me streamline things a bit better for myself, because I want to recognize the fact that, look, I'm a woman who's growing and I might not always have the energy to travel and do all of the things I do now. So how do I begin to create assets that can produce revenue even when I'm asleep, when I'm on vacation? How do I leverage the technology that's available to not need to be live in order to create revenue? It has so many opportunities if you do it right and can create a business model that makes it make sense. So I would encourage people to think about not just you as the deliverer of the content, but what partnerships can you forge with other coaches, that maybe you're good as the strategist and someone else is good as the psychotherapist, emotional, and then someone's good in like a practical skill set. So I've partnered with image consultants and, psychotherapists and others so that I can provide a more holistic offering and not have to conduct all the classes myself and all the workshops myself and all of the things myself. So that the business piece needs to make sense if you'll have longevity in it, because in the beginning it's fun, but sometimes you're, I gotta get on this call. I gotta, so that's why you have to start thinking of how do you recognize the potential revenue lines that could exist and start creating assets that can create revenue, whether you're opening your mouth or not, whether you're in a session or not, whether you're in a public speaking engagement or not.
I want you to synthesize something for me a little bit. You talked about Usain Bolt's coach, Michael Jordan's coach, and sometimes you've heard this saying that people are like, okay, there's this person who says they can teach me to be a millionaire, but they don't seem to be a millionaire themselves. So you said that the coach is more of strategy. So you said you look at Usain Bolt's coach, he doesn't look like he could run that fast, but he knows the strategy. So how would you advise a woman out there who's looking at coaches and maybe she's looking at a financial coach. She wants to get to be that millionaire or whatever. And they're looking at coaches, and some don't look like they're millionaires, but they're saying they have the strategy to it. So how do we balance between, do you know what you're saying, or are you a scam?
I think there's a couple of things I'd encourage you to look out for. So I think number one, when identifying who you want to coach you, of course, the results they've had for other people, I trust that more than I trust their own result. Because it is possible to know more than you actually do. Some people are very knowledgeable. They know what to do, but don't do it for themselves. I'm sure you can think of like one or two people, or even in your own life, where you hang up a call and you gave advice to someone. It's like, I don't even do that myself, but I know that that's the right thing to do. So I don't think you should discount a coach simply because they're not where they need to be in proof point in their own life. Because I think coaching is the kind of work where the principles don't suspend themselves just because you're a coach. Like if you don't implement, just like a fitness coach, like you should be eating these foods, you should be working out this, but you have a head knowledge, but you've not implemented. So I like third party, because if there are verifiable third party testimonials, but it does help when the person has what you want, but I don't think it can be the only factor to look out for, especially when there's someone who's really good at getting in your head and making you feel like all things are possible. So you make a mistake if you go entirely by the outward expressions, because everyone, quite frankly, is on their own growth journey. Maybe, some of the things that my coach tells me she hasn't applied for herself, but it doesn't delegitimize what's being said. So there's some people who have the knowledge, know how to get in your head, know how to get you to get the result, but may not have it visible and tangible yet in their own lives, but that doesn't delegitimize them. So that's a word of caution I would give.
I like that. It's a very interesting way to look about it, a mindset shift. Yes. I really like that. Awesome. So as we come to a close, I'd like you to look into the camera and speak to that woman who wants to move from just existing to prominence, she knows she's made for more, but she doesn't know how to get there. Speak to her. What should she do? What are the first steps she needs to take?
To every woman watching me now, I want you to understand a couple of things. You wouldn't be having those ideas, those big pictures, that vision of yourself as prominent, as accomplished, if it wasn't within your reach. I want you to embody by doing this one thing. Start acting like her now. That woman that you're called to be, start making decisions today as if you were her now. If I were an international public speaker, if I were a C-suite executive, how would I use my time now? How would I come at this decision now? How would I take care of my body and my presentation now? Because quite frankly, in all the things that I've said today, if you just let that be your benchmark, you'll make some major shifts. Give yourself 6 months. There's a saying, it's very American. There's a saying that if you start walking like the boss, talking like the boss, acting like the boss, eventually you'll be the boss. There's something about beginning to act as if it's already done, beginning to move in the direction of that picture that's on the inside, even if your environment doesn't quite reflect it. That is a powerful indicator of readiness. I believe that God wants to prepare you for prominence, but that means you've got to get good at asking for help and even paying for help. Don't give in to those excuses that you don't have or you can't. There's no such thing as a lack of resources. It's usually a lack of resourcefulness. What can you do to make sure that all of the mentoring, the counseling and coaching that will get you to the next level is available to you? May mean that you have to start having some big girl conversations with your nearest and dearest, but it all boils down to that decision. I am going to be that woman now. I'm going to start acting like her now. I'm going to start making decisions over my schedule as if I'm her now. And that way you'll start to streamline your life, streamline your networks, and streamline your thinking. to make it more likely that you'll be who God's called you to be all along. So remember, the call of God on your life was not a conference call. So you've got to be deaf to what people whisper, what people say, and you've got to be solely committed to pushing until it becomes true. I'm cheering you on, and I can't wait to welcome you to a future standout women's leadership experience.
Awesome, awesome. You've heard it from Yawa Hansen. Start acting like the woman you want to become now. This has been She Means Business. I have been your host, Claire Munde. Until next time, have a good one.